Let us pray. Almighty and ever-living God, please, we are praying. Almighty God, we remain grateful to you for how far you have brought us. By your grace, you have brought us together from the morning recess. We commit this session also to your care, that you guide and direct us by your Spirit, so that this will be a fruitful time of acquiring knowledge and refreshing our knowledge and experience of what we know and what we are supposed to know and do. We commit all facilitators before you, that, Lord, use them to educate and nourish us. We thank you for hearing our prayers. In the name of Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen. Please, let's sit.
Good afternoon and welcome to this afternoon's session. The colloquium is under the theme Asante in the League of Nations, Otumfuo, Osei, Tutu II, a Servant King. And we'll deliberate on this under sub-themes like the personality of Otumfuo, the Servant King, modernizer of the Asante state, mediator of conflict, enforcer of gender equality, provider of social protection to the underprivileged, protector of national politics, relations with other kings in Africa, global diplomat for Ghana. It will be an exciting session with great discussants with various expertise in different fields. However, to moderate this, I would hand over and invite Reverend Father Dr. Dennis Berima of the Royal Society for Asante History and Culture and Dr. Ali Yakub Nyaba, History Lecturer in the Department of History and Political Studies, KNUST, to take over. A round of applause.
Thank you very much, our MC. We are gathered here this afternoon as part of the one-week celebration in honor of our great king. And this university, the KNUST, is firmly rooted in the heart of the Asante Kingdom, Asante man here. Noble king, Otumfuo Osei Tutu, is not just a leader of this great kingdom, but has for the past 13 years officially fathered this institution as Chancellor. It is therefore befitting, if not compelling, for KNUST to be associated with the 20 glorious years celebration of the reign of our great king. It is in this regard that the Department of History and Political Studies, in collaboration with the Menchia Secretariat, have put together distinguished personalities and/or scholars who are not only knowledgeable in the history of Asante, but who have, in various capacities, actively lived through the 20-year reign of the current eminent king and indeed some of his predecessors. Today, we are very, very lucky to have them on one table to speak to 4 broad themes that has already been read out by our MC. And this will greatly enhance our appreciation of the historical factors that have shaped the course of history of the Asante Kingdom, and particularly the astute dynamism exhibited by the current king in his 20-year reign. You are very warmly welcome to this very important program. And a program like this equally requires a competent chairperson who my colleague moderator will introduce. He is a senior colleague, not in the priesthood, but we attended school together at the basic level, and then he went to university before me, so he's a senior colleague, but today he's my moderator, co-moderator, and he's going to introduce the very competent chairperson. Thank you.
And I played for his father's team. I stand to do the important task of letting you know our chairman for the day. He is a legal policy and governance expert, and currently the executive director of Ghana Center for Democratic Development, a think tank that works to promote democracy, good governance, and inclusive growth and development. A constitutional and comparative law scholar, he served on the faculty of Seton Hall University of Law in New Jersey, United States of America, from 2003 to 2015, securing a tenure as a full professor in 2008. He was a visiting professor at Gimpa Law School from 2010 to 2011, and has been a visiting professor at the Central European University in Budapest, Hungary, since the summer of 2014, co-teaching a course on the constitution building in Africa. Between 2013 to 2014, he served as constitutional advisor to the United Nations Special Envoy to Yemen, assisting Yemen's National Dialogue Conference and Constitution Drafting Commission to design a draft of a new constitution for post-conflict Yemen. He also served as a counsel to the Attorney General of Ghana in connection with the Ghana-La Côte d'Ivoire maritime boundary delimitation, which had the adjudication in favor of Ghana by the Hamburg-based International Tribunal of the Law of the Seas in 2017. Previously, he practiced law in Washington, D.C. in the United States of America, first as an associate with O'Melvin and Myers in 1993 to 1998, and later with Cleary, Gottlieb, Steen, and Hamilton in 1998 to 2001, both leading international corporate law firms. Prior to pursuing graduate studies in the United States, he was a regional marketing manager with Kenya Tobacco, a company in Ghana which is a subsidiary of British American Tobacco. He obtained doctorate of jurisprudence degree from the University of Yale, where he served as an editor of the Yale Law Journal and teaching fellow at the Yale Law School, a product of Odan Secondary School. He holds master's degree in business administration from Baylor University, Texas, and bachelor's degree in management from University of Ghana. He is currently a member of the Ghana Law Reform Commission. Otumfuo, Nananom, dear discussants, ladies and gentlemen, I have the pleasure of introducing to you Professor Henry Kwesi Prempeh. He is your man in the seat.
Thank you very much. Your Majesty Otumfuo Osei Tutu II, Asantehene and Chancellor of the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, Nananom, the Chairman, members of the Governing Council and Vice Chancellor of this great university, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I'm extremely honored to have been asked to chair this special commemorative colloquium in honor of His Majesty the Asantehene. I would like first and foremost to congratulate and salute you, Your Majesty Otumfuo Osei II, on the happy occasion of the 20th anniversary of your ascension to the Golden Stool, and to wish you and Asanteman many more such anniversaries. The theme chosen for this colloquium, as already stated, is Asante in the League of Nations, Otumfuo Osei II, a servant king. To help us explore and discuss this wide-ranging theme, our able organizers have assembled what is indisputably a lineup of very distinguished and accomplished speakers, each of whom I shall have the pleasure to introduce in due course. My task in these opening remarks is merely to provide a little context within which to situate our discussions, a context that is often glossed over and taken for granted when we are called upon to assess the reign of a Ghanaian traditional monarch. I would like to begin this context setting with the observation that Otumfuo Osei II is the first Asantehene of the Fourth Republic. This means that his reign has taken place entirely within the context of a highly competitive, multi-party political environment under a still unitary Republican constitution that has spawned a diverse and vibrant, sometimes licentious free media, and a politically engaged, if often disputatious, citizenry. Let us proceed briefly to unpack what this means to be Asantehene. Because it is only by doing so that we might grasp the full weight and complexity of the challenge that the Constitution and politics of the Fourth Republic have imposed uniquely on Otumfuo Osei II these last 20 years, and thereby help us appreciate the full measure of the exceptional leadership he has demonstrated in the face of these challenges. In this Fourth Republic, as in the first and the third before it, the President of the Republic combines in his person the roles and prerogatives of head of state and head of government. He shares his formal executive authority and powers with no one, national, subnational, or local. Moreover, all of the primary indicia of sovereign power, namely the power to levy a tax, the power to enact and enforce criminal law and impose criminal penalties, the power to raise and deploy an army, the power of eminent domain, all these belong exclusively to the central government and are formally exercised on its behalf by the President of the Republic. In fact, all of the mineral wealth of this land and all of our natural resources, including forestry resources, no matter where they may be located or found, are vested by law in the self-same President of the Republic on behalf of the people. Our constitutional Republican order reserves no substantive or formal role for any traditional monarch. Even on the 28-member Council of State, which is often considered a modern constitutional borrowing from our traditional system of governance, only one seat out of a Council of 28 is reserved for the President of the National House of Chiefs. And as we know, Otumfuo Osei II has not once occupied or offered himself for that office which was at one time reserved for his predecessors, the 15th and 14th occupants of the Golden Stool. Our Republican Constitution indeed goes further to exclude chiefs expressly from participating in politics. What I have just described is a constitutional system that appears designed to relegate chiefs to the background in the affairs of state, almost to the point of asking them to be spectators in the public governance of this republic, except in the limited domain of chieftaincy, custom, and the application of customary law. And even in the latter case, the Supreme Court has the last word. And yet, notwithstanding these constitutional constraints and limitations on our traditional monarchs, notwithstanding being situated in a republican context in which the president of the republic is constitutionally virtually the monarch of all that he surveys, the general expectation that our kings and chiefs would demonstrate leadership and results, even in matters that appear to be formally within the sphere of public office holders and secular authorities, has not at all diminished. The burden of responsibility that this undiminished expectation places on a monarch with the cultural and historical stature of the Asantehene is exceptionally weighty. Though ostensibly marginalized in de jure terms, as lawyers would say, a great deal is still expected de facto of the Otumfuo. Lacking formal authority and formal entitlement to sovereign resources, the Asantehene is left to rely naturally on his personal genius, wisdom, and resourcefulness, backed by the social legitimacy and influence that comes with his cultural power and status as the occupant of the Golden Stool. Even in the one former public office that I know him to hold, that being the Chancellor of this great university, it is fair to say that it is His Majesty's deployment of his personal influence and cultural resources, more than recourse to any formal unilateral authority, that we often see at play. In short, when we come to take a measure of what contribution Otumfuo Osei II has made in the public sphere, whether it be as champion of education or as the consummate diplomat and peacemaker, we must not lose sight of the fact that he comes to these roles primarily with no formal authority or formal entitlement to sovereign resources. We must see his success in these roles then as the triumph of the de facto over the de jure. Let us also look, and lastly, at the political context within which Otumfuo Osei II is situated. Otumfuo Osei II may have been spared the upheavals associated with the era of military coups d'etat, but the Fourth Republic has come with its own drama, transitions, and tensions. Enthroned as Asantehene in the middle of the second and last term of President Rawlings, Otumfuo Osei II has witnessed and experienced party turnover in government 3 times, from the NDC to the NPP in 2001, back to NDC 2009, and to the NPP again in 2017. In his 20 years on the throne, His Majesty has had to work and deal with 5 presidents, 2 from the NDC, 2 from the NPP, 1 of them an Asante. Of the 2 political parties that have taken turns in government, one has deep historical roots in Asante, dating back to the political rivalries of the period of late colonialism, which continues to draw exceptionally strong support from voters in this region. Electoral competition between the 2 main parties have been vigorous, often acrimonious, including on Ashanti soil, and not infrequently, the partisanship has taken an ethno-regional turn and even threatened violence on occasion. This sums up the political minefield Otumfuo Osei II has had to navigate these last 20 years. And from my own very little corner as head of a civil society think tank that has been in the business of promoting good governance for roughly as long as His Majesty has occupied the golden stool, I can relate to some of the challenges the Otumfuo must face in this highly polarized partisan political space. I suspect that His Majesty faces an even more daunting no-win situation, except that unlike we at CDD, who are frequently accused of anti-incumbent bias, in His Majesty's case, he is probably more likely to be accused of being pro whichever party happens to be in government, since in the nature of his role, he has no choice but to work in partnership with whoever controls the levers of government. This is an extraordinarily tricky challenge for a traditional monarch who is expected, or in some cases required almost, to play a unifying role, demonstrate political neutrality and detachment, remain accessible to all parties and factions of our political class, yet be able to speak truth to power if need be, albeit privately, while staying above the partisan fray and at the same time embodying the unity of Asantehene and championing its interest and concerns. To be successful at this juggling act requires an exceptional judgment, tact, statecraft integrity, and diplomacy. Here too, I believe, by all accounts, Otumfuo Osei Tutu has not disappointed. I think it's important to appreciate this context, this dual context. One based in the Constitution, one based in our politics, whenever we come to this task of taking a measure of the role and the contribution of a traditional monarch, especially one in the person and of the stature of Otumfuo Osei Tutu II. The constitutional and political environment provide few substantial inputs to a traditional monarch in his position. Yet substantial outputs and outcomes are expected, even demanded. And yet one wonders if Otumfuo could have accomplished the success he has accomplished were the authority of his office based principally on the authority of formal secular law rather than the authority of his personal leadership and of the immense cultural and historical power he commands and embodies. I shall leave it to the rest of the speakers to perhaps answer this challenge and also shed a lot more detail on what role and contribution Otumfuo Osei Tutu II has played in these last 20 years. Thank you. These are just my opening remarks. Opening lecture, more or less, right? You don't invite a lawyer to give brief remarks. It doesn't work. So I shall proceed to introduce our first speaker, and then the moderators will tell us what theme they will address in their remarks, or in his remarks, and we will then proceed in that order. The first speaker is my fellow suited member on the stage. He is Mr. Kwame Ahin, born at Barikasi in the Asante region of Ghana. He attended the Barikasi Methodist School from 1959 to 1966. In September of 1966, he was admitted to Prempeh College for his five-year O-level course and pursued his A-level course at Apam Secondary School in the Central Region. In 1973, he was admitted to the Faculty of Law, University of Ghana, where he studied law with history. He was admitted to the LLB honors degree in 1977. He proceeded to the Ghana Law School, Ghana School of Law, and was finally enrolled on the roll of lawyers and called to the bar in November 1979. Mr. Ahin has practiced the law in Kumasi for a considerable number of years. He's again a minor functionary at the Asante Court in Menchia, and I personally know him as the author of a very recent, I picked a copy of a very recent book published on Otumfuo, Osei Tutu II, and was delighted to find that the author was no other than Mr. Kwame Ahim. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Kwame Ahim.
Esquire, we would like to lay a carpet for our discussion today. The formation of Asante Nation. Could you walk us through the contours of the history? And please pick the high points of the expansion mission of Asante and the purposes for that.
Thank you. Your Majesty, Otumfuo, all protocol observed. I'm grateful to Your Majesty and all who are gathered here for the privilege done me by inviting me to give a talk on the formation of Asante, or give you knowledge about Asante history. One cannot do justice to any talk on Asante history without knowing who the Asantes are. Geographically, the Asantes are predominantly found in the central part of Ghana. However, they are also found elsewhere throughout the country, because we can be identified not only by our geographical location, by the language we speak, our culture and traditions. That is what the historians and anthropologists say. And this underscores why, apart from the Ashanti region, we have Asantes scattered all over Ghana. If you go to the Volta region, you get the Asantes. Eastern, you get Asantes. Central, everywhere. At this juncture, I would like to give you a brief talk on the formation of the Asante Empire. Oh, it's okay. Asante was indeed a great empire, and the description of the Asante Empire at the apogee of its power is even described by scholars like Professor J.K. Fenn. In his book, Asante in the 18th and 19th century, the late Professor J.K. Fenn described Asante as follows, succinctly as follows. The history of Ghana, the history of the Gold Coast, which is now Ghana, in the 18th and 19th centuries, is largely the history of the rise and consolidation of the Asante Kingdom and its relations with the neighboring African countries. It is true, because Asante charted the course of Ghana history. Throughout our history, Asante dominated. We dominated the politics, the trade and politics of the Gold Coast. the late Professor Emeritus Avowitz has also said a lot about the Asantes in his book, Asante in the 19th Century. According to him, at the apogee of his power, Asante was divided into metropolitan Asante and provincial Asante. Metropolitan Asante comprised Asante proper and even those in the Bron-Afo region, which has now been redivided. It included Doma, Techiman, and other states in the Bron. Then we have provincial Asante. People do not know. But Asante was so powerful that through conquest and its expansionist moves, it conquered southern states like Achem, Kwau, Denchira, Fante, and so forth. So that by the apogee of his power, Asante was divided into metropolitan Asante and provincial Asante. And to ensure effective control of the provinces, the Asante placed consuls or proconsuls there to check any acts of dissident or rivalry. Let me now give other description. This is to show the greatness of the Asante nation at the apogee of its power. An American scholar, in the person of Stanley M. Elton, had this to say on the ingenuity of Asante, and I quote, for all due respect, I'm giving you this to show the greatness of the Asante at the apogee of its power. A meaningful comparison between such a society and that of medieval Europe would be difficult, but the political federation of the Asante, their traditional constitution, their tax and revenue structure, and their military system, a system that enabled them to wage extended campaigns and armies as large as 40,000, and that's one to say that, to argue that the Asante must have had an institutional life at least as sophisticated as that of Anglo-Saxon England. Look at this description. It shows the greatness of Asante when it reached the apogee of its power. And when was that? In the 18th and 19th centuries. Then another historian, English historian, also had this to say about Asante. At the apogee of his era, Asante could be said to be the nearest approximation to a modern nation, that is in Africa, that was reached independent of all European influences. We did so well that at the apogee of its power, Asante could be compared to any country in Europe that done in the medieval times. Then Professor Avowitz also talked about the ingenuity of Asante and also added that it's a well-known saying that those who do not know their history are condemned to repeat it. The Asante have always known their history. Please note me down. The Asantes have always known their history. And so have avoided becoming trapped in an unchanging past. whether a sovereign state before 1901, a crown colony between 1901 and 1957, or a part of the Republic of Ghana since 1957. Asante has been able, on the one hand, to adopt and adjust to global changes. And I repeat, Asante has been able, on one hand, to adopt and adjust to global changes, and on the other hand, to maintain its cultural identity. That is great, Asante, for you. He goes on, and this is very important. It is often said that the history of Asante is better known than that of any other African kingdom south of the Sahara. This is what I've always said. The history of Asante is better known than that of any other African kingdom south of the Sahara. This is what I've always says about Asante. It is very clear from the description they have given that Asante was able to build an empire which was the attraction of all Europeans. The description given by them attests to that fact. Then, let us now consider the success story of the Asantes, which is even very important. Who were able to do this? The origins of the Asante are shrouded in myth and mystery. We can't trace, can't give the detailed origins of the Asante as of now. The time is limited. But for all we know, what is certain is that kings like Chumanchi, Utiakenten, and Obuyebu started to build, started to form, to build a kingdom or form the state, Asante state. But they did not do much to merit special mention. Well, their names cannot be written up. But the Asante kingdom proper was built by King Osei Tutu of Otumfuo. He is reputed to be the founder, builder and founder of the Asante kingdom. And he did this with the aid of his constitutional, spiritual, and political advisor, Otumfuo, who is popularly known as Komfoko. Historians say his reign, that is, this great king, from the last decade of the 17th century to the first 2 decades of the 18th century. What he did this on the advice of his spiritual and political advisor, Otumfuo, was to unite the small states like Tafo, Kasi, and Mokonsa that surrounded Kwaman. In fact, Kwaman was there before Asante was built into a kingdom. But the first thing Osei Tutu and his political advisor did was to unite all this, because in unity lies strength. He saw that without unity, they cannot form a kingdom. And they needed to make some conquests before forming the kingdom. So the first thing they did was to unite these petty states. Okay, very well. After uniting these petty states, they then established a capital, Kumasi, because building institutions, creating institutions, is a precondition for mounting any effort for conquest or building the kingdom. So they established Kumasi as the capital. Then the next thing they did was the creation of the golden shoe, which was very important. The creation of the golden shoe stemmed from the idea of making a visible, concrete object the focal point of sentiment and national unity. they needed a symbol that will arouse sentiments. People will believe in the symbol and then unite. And this was the golden stool that was created. And at a gathering of Asante chiefs and the people of Asante, Otumfuo conjured this golden stool from the skies. Then they provided the Asante with an unwritten constitution. It's very, very important. The Asante were to be guided by laws. And they provide Asante with an unwritten constitution. Please note this. Under the constitution, it is only the descendants of King Osei Tutu of Otumfuo who are to ascend to the golden stool. So when somebody comes from like a corner Kenyan, they are playing. According to our constitution, which has been obeyed to date, it is only the descendants of Otumfuo who are to mount the golden stool. And it is the golden stool that legitimately defines like Mira. Note down this history. And it is only the descendants of Otumfuo who can mount the golden stool.
That is a lawyer forcefully arguing.
Please, I'm left with some. Oh, the time is too small. Too short. Then came to a draft festival. But note this. Then Osei Tutu was chosen as the head, the militant and constitutional head of the Asantes. So with Osei Tutu as the constitutional and militant head, and as it has been symbolized in the golden stool, on the advice of Otumfuo, know this very well, all preeminent symbols of political authority like stools, those stools, lesser stools, were burnt and buried in a place in Kumasi. This is symbolic in the sense that a new order gave way to the old order, whereby Obrieboa and others gave way to a new order. We call it. Please, I'm winding up. Please, I'm winding up. One more minute. Hey, one more minute. Asantis call this, please. Asantis call this Kwadane. Please, they call this Kwadane. Kwadane. There was a complete revolution, and this has been obeyed to date. Please, I thank you very much for having patience with me.
Yes, that is truly the man. Dr. Donko, we have heard Lawyer Kwame Ahen expose us to some realities of this expansion mission. We would want your intervention on the same topic. You know, you walk us through history, there were different agendas. It is said in the Asante history that a king like Otumfuo Kusobodum never waged war, but concentrated on administrative structures. So the expansion agenda was not merely on the basis of aggressions and then occupying other lands and whatnot. Please still give intervention on the formation and then how Asante has flourished to date.
His Majesty. Is it on? Okay. His Majesty. Otumfuo. Okay. Nananom, members of the clergy, Vice Chancellor, colleague academics and administrators, students, ladies and gentlemen, please permit me to add a few thoughts to what my senior colleague has already elucidated. I think he made a point that the foundation of Asante is shrouded in myths and stories. Yes, I want to point out that historically, Asante was an oral society and therefore did not write down its history, but has had a sense of recording its history orally. Fortunately for us, we now have the benefit of archaeology to support us in our evidence. Very often, people talking about the origins of Asante and even modern Ghana try to trace us migration of ancestors from places like Mesopotamia, Ethiopia, Western Sudan, ancient Ghana, Mali, and so on. But research has indicated that there's no mass migration into the forest region of modern Ghana. As I said, archaeology has helped us to find out that, indeed, man has inhabited the forest area of which Asante forms part, dating back to the Stone Age period. In fact, if you listen to what the ancestors have passed on, very often they talk about coming from Ethem and coming from Esro. They did not say Yefri Wiem, but they said Yefri Sro. Having had the privilege of climbing the steep sacred site of Taprenyankum in Jadem in Asante Achim, I really understood what the ancestors meant by Yefrisro, because it was a small community that lived on the hilltop. And at a point in time, I think when the community had become too big to stay on top of the hill, they descended into one mufri hin ebaye, one mufri sro and ebaye. Then I've also had the privilege of traveling to Yefri, near Kintampo and Nkranza, where they have the caves and the Mwedubuo, which were grinding mills of these people, again dating back to the Stone Age period. And so I see free fem na baya, free fem na baya, free the caves, isn't it? Caves in our fem. And as we sit here today, I must say that we sit on sacred ancient sites of prehistoric times. In the botanic gardens on KNUST soil, along the banks of the Riri, which courses through the botanic gardens, this was a Stone Age factory site. And today young people say Sasabon Samne and Konfuanoche fought a battle there. But it was a Stone Age site where man who lived in the forest went to the riverside to produce his stone implements and other stuff. And very close to us here, the space between Brubro Road and Esioja Road is another ancient sacred site where prehistoric man lived. How do I know all this? Archaeologist. Before the university was developed, Kwame Nkrumah tasked archaeologists to come in to survey the land, and these were some of their discoveries. But it looks like we are losing sight of some of our heritage. So, Vice Chancellor, I hope from now you make serious efforts to develop these sites, and maybe we can use it as a tourist site to bring in people and extra revenue. So that no more will people be talking about the ancestors coming from all over, all over the place, but rather respect, honor, and laud the ancestors who lived in the thick forest and were able, through their ingenuity, were able to fell the trees in the forest and to make a habitation here. It was these people who discovered the yellow substance, right, and started using the yellow substance before people from outside came in to trade with them. It was these ancient people who discovered the round, the kola nuts, and started using them before people from outside came in to trade with them. So it's very important that we pay attention to them and also honor their memory. In fact, a prominent archaeologist, Professor Peter Shinny, has said that everywhere in the forest area where man has said our ancestors came from the Efem and Esro, excavations had revealed that man had inhabited those areas in the past. There's a lot to be said, but we don't have too much time. So I'll quickly add that my learned friend said, hey, am I your friend? My learned friend said, Asante was a great empire. Indeed, Asante evolved into a very great empire. And at its height, Asante covered the whole of the region of modern Ghana, except the coastal strip. And it extended into parts of modern-day Côte d'Ivoire to the west, and some take it to as far as Benin, that's Dahomey, in the east, and even to parts of Burkina Faso. So some people want to say that, in fact, the creation of Ghana was a construct by the Asante. It was Asante that established the modern entity that became known as Ghana before the British came in to undermine and later on reconstruct what had been there before. I think I'll stop here for the time being, and in future we can talk more. Thank you very much.
Next speaker is Professor Kofi Ejekun. I shall proceed to introduce him, and then the moderators will tell us the sub-theme to which he will address his remarks. Professor Kofi Ejekun, who is seated to my immediate left, is Professor of Linguistics at the University of Ghana, and currently the Dean of the School of Performing Arts at Legon. He achieved a first class with honors at the end of the bachelor's degree program in 1989 from the University of Ghana. He pursued his master's degree in philosophy at the Norwegian University of Science and Technology, Trondheim, and had his terminal degree in linguistics from Legon in 2003. His areas of research are ethnography of communication, linguistic anthropology, pragmatics, discourse analysis, language and politics, mother tongue education, Akan studies, social linguistics, stylistics, semantics, translation, terminology, lexicology. Okay. And orature. As published in many renowned international and local journals, and has 15 books and 63 journal articles and book chapters to his name. His latest book, Akan Body Parts Expressions, was launched on the 27th of March, 2019, just a few weeks ago. His hobbies include gospel, football, and indigenous meals, cooking more than eating, I guess. Professor Kofi Ejekum will speak next.
Yes, Prof is supposed to speak to leadership and courtesies of subjects in the Asante culture. Prof, there are certain requirements or obligations of Asante subjects towards their political leaders, and even vice versa. Indeed, throughout the history of the kingdom, Asante political leaders have elicited the support of their subjects somehow through these cultural obligations. You may be required to highlight the historical antecedents of these cultural obligations, taking into consideration how it has been applied by various Asante leaders, and to what extent this has been affected by cultural change. Thank you.
Thank you very much, moderators and Mr. Chairman. His Majesty Otumfuo Osei Tutu II, Nananom, ministers of our religion and our fathers, especially my mentor, Archbishop Kwesi Sapon. I've used a lot of his books, so I owe tribute to him. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm supposed to speak on leadership and courtesies of subjects in the Asante culture. As a linguistic anthropologist, somebody who deals with language, we use language to understand society. And most of the things we do are embodied in the languages that have been put there for us by our ancestors. So I cannot discuss this topic without resorting to certain expressions that are found in the language. So I'm starting with, if you have a leader, you should have subjects. And they work hand in hand. After all, the adage says, Benkum jari nifa, na nifan so jari benkum. So while the leaders are helping us to tone a good kind of path, we the subjects, we also have a duty to help our leaders to achieve our developmental projects. Otumfuo alone cannot develop Asante. And we alone as subjects cannot do that unless we work hand in hand. And this has been the norm since the establishment of the Asante Kingdom. After all, the Asantes will say, it means that even in the midst of wars, the leader will have to stand up, and we, the subjects, we have to go and fight. So that is the premises. The Asante culture emphasizes balance of power between the ruler, who is the leader, and the ruled, his subjects. So there's a mutual coordination, and this has been there since the time of Otumfuo Osei Tutu I. It therefore demands a mutual respect
and synergy between the ruler and the ruled. That's why anytime somebody is installed or installed as a king, when he's swearing the oath of allegiance, when he's swearing the what I call reminiscential oath, because I define in term not as a mere oath, the one they have been doing in Parliament, I, that you mention your name and they say, so help us God. No. To me, a reminiscential oath sends us back into the history and talks about some unpleasant things that happened that people are not allowed to say them for the fact that there might be a reoccurrence of that same issue. It could be a defeat in war, it could be a plague, it could be a famine. So anytime somebody is swearing an oath, the person is ready to defend what he's saying. So when they are swearing oath of office, they tell us that they are going to continue type of systematic rule that their predecessors did. And whether rain or shine, when we call them as subjects, they will come and serve, except sickness. So by that, anytime a new chief, a new king, a new odikro, a new leader comes to office, he's aware of the fact that he has a role to play, and also aware of the fact that the subjects are also to respect him. So if you are an Asante and you don't respect your king, then I'm afraid about your Asanteness. But all in all, every Asante leader also knows that every ruler coming from the time of Socrates, that you must first learn to obey and have the ability to command. So any chief here, and with all apologies to Nana Otumfuo, Otumfuo knows that he must first learn to obey the Asante norms, the Asante rules and regulations, the Asante taboos, what to say in Asante and what not to say. When he is abreast with that, then he has the power to control us to follow suit. So if you are a chief and you are not following the regulations and rules, and you want your subjects to give you the courtesies, I'm afraid you fail. So as kings, as chiefs, our duty is continuity. What is this type of continuity? The traditional and indigenous system of ruling our people. Even though we have modernization, we are talking about globalization, we can do all that, but we shouldn't forget that there was Asante before globalization. The Asantehene respects and gives the desired courtesies to his subjects because he's mindful of the adage, Abuano, Nananom Sebe, Nentakra, and Yemaye Huno Nekasia. Na Sabia Musabia Mprediasa, and Takra Hunso dear, and then Kafenam Quatrequa. So the chief, the king, the Oprempon, the Omanhini knows that he has subjects, but he's talking about quality subjects. You can have 1,000 people serving you, but if they are not of the highest quality, and by highest quality, I'm talking about subjects who understand Asante indigenous knowledge. I'm talking about subjects who know the history of Asante. I'm not talking about subjects who have PhDs and professors, because there could be professors who know nothing to Asante culture, who know nothing to Asante tradition, who don't speak the Asante language, which is the pillar of being an Asante. So if you're an Asante here, and you consider yourself as a subject, and you don't speak the Asante language, and then in your house, you don't speak Asante with your children, then why do you label yourself as an Asante? Because of what they now call Siatra. You go to a compound house, and the parents are speaking English with their children. You say, and then you ask of the quality of brofo or momano. Yesterday, he went to school. So, if we want to expect our subjects to be courteous to us as Nananum, we must also show that mutual respect. Akan culture, religion, history, social life, philosophy, and worldview should be known by all Akans if they consider themselves as identified Akans and identified Asantes, so that even when the chiefs are going wrong, we as the subjects, we can say, Nana, with all apology, we and say and kebi a. But if you don't know if the chief is going through the wrong path, how are you going to correct it? So let us sit down, study our language, study our history, study our philosophy, study our religion, and then we can contribute immensely towards the development of Asante. The Asante language and culture are the bane, the product of what we can do to foster better relations. As we do that, we must also be conscious of two types of taboos. One is the behavioral taboo, and the other is verbal taboo. The behavioral taboo talk about what you can do and what you cannot do. I'm sure all of Asante, there are certain days that you can't go to farm. There are certain days that people cannot enter into certain streams to fetch water. These have been there. And let me tell you, most of these taboos have environmental implications. Because if for one day you leave the stream to flow, the next day if you go, you see the water very, very neat. So Nananum were very wise. Unfortunately, we refer to them as primitive people. And we think we are modern people. We know we shouldn't be deceiving ourselves. Because after studying language for a longer period, I asked myself, at what point in time did Nananum sit down to put up these words? Let me give you just two words. The word for peace is what? It comes from three words. Ason is the ear, and mu, which is inside, and jo, to cool down. So asumdwe means, asumdwe simply means that the state where the person has some coolness in the ear and nobody is disturbing him. So anytime we say yapasumdwe, it is tapped from the body part. And when did Nananum consider that? I don't have the answers. Nananum talk of aswanding, and I'm sure some of the youth here are aswanding for. That comes from the word aswan, which is ear. Din means hard. So literally, if you have hard ears, your ears are so stiff that the message gets to the ear and bounces back. So there's no way the message will get into your brain. But there's some cushion in the ears. Na ato cushion also. Na nya baby ada. Na etumi ama asono e de ama wadwene na wadwene e de ayadwuma. This Nananum did. They had not entered P1, but they could do it. And now we say that they were primitive and we are modern. And as I say, the next thing is that Asante land and boundaries and the entire topography of Asante is what Asante kings, including the current His Majesty Osei Tutu II, they have been fighting to make sure that nobody, and I mean nobody whatsoever, can take an inch of the land that was bequeathed to them by our ancestors. In much the same way, if the Asantehene is the overlord of all the Asante lands, he has metaphorically just one eye, but it can see afar. But you have been appointed a chief or an abusuapeni somewhere. What are you doing to the land? Said that not even an inch will be taken away from the Asantes. So those of you who have been selling lands left, right, center, forward, the moment you do that, you are creating the impression that if we don't take care, some of the Asante lands will move out of the hands of Asantes. So abusuampani for Madaroma, yesremwa motons asenoa na mahwe kakra. Remember I said abuano sabenen takra ena maye hunu ne kesiye. Nti danate hai yanye wa ha ya somfui ena ebemwe hunu Otumfuo ne kesiye ene de tumi. Nanso sabe entakra hunu de fanyram kwatrekwa. So do be si hene na watonton asase na die na bi mande ene oni hene kra nana emsen ka opensa. Every Asantehene from the establishment of Asante nation shows signs of politeness to his chiefs, his subjects, and even his servants. He should be ready to work assiduously towards the development of his human capital, as well as the development of the state and the land. And Otumfuo has done that. He established the scholarship system where people can go to school and study for free. He has all kinds of interventional projects that are helping Asante, and not only in Asante, but beyond Asante to other people. The adage that I've said already is that if the royal fails to fight, the servant runs away. This testifies the contributory factors of both the leader and his subjects. The Asante culture demands that the Asantehene should be a listening king and be ready to learn from his chiefs, traditional priests, queen mothers, subjects, and in some instances, even his servants. It therefore behoves on all of us to study and learn every aspect of Asante culture, Asante language, so that we can contribute our quota. So that if Otumfuo is doing his part, we can give him a support. Without that, Asante will not develop. Thank you for listening to me.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor Ejekum. To respond to Professor Ejekum's remarks is the Most Reverend Dr. Peter Kwesi Sapon. It is only fitting that he be the respondent, since Professor Ejekum paid appropriate tribute to him as the source of much of the knowledge that he himself has displayed here today. The Most Reverend Dr. Kwesi Sapon is Archbishop Emeritus of Kumasi. He had his education at St. Teresa's Minor Seminary between 1950 and 1953, and St. Peter's Major Seminary, Cape Coast, 1954 to 1959. He pursued university education abroad, receiving his licentiate in sacred theology and STD, which I suppose is a doctorate of sorts in theology, not STD, from the University of St. Thomas Aquinas in Rome. He received further training at the University of Oxford, England, where he earned a master's in social anthropology. He was ordained a priest in Kumasi in December 1959 and became the Catholic Bishop of Kumasi in 1970. He was appointed Archbishop of Kumasi in 2002 and retired in March 2008. The Archbishop has authored 26 books and has over 500 academic articles to his credit. He's also served our nation and Africa at large in multiple capacities, including as chaplain of Otumfuo Hospital, President, Catholic Bishops' Conference of Ghana, 1988 to 1991. Those were very tough years. Catholic Chairman, Council Chairman, University of Science and Technology, 72 to 1977. Chancellor, Catholic Institute, West Africa, Port Harcourt, Nigeria. Fellow, Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences. Council of State member during Ghana's Third Republic. And consultant for Papal Council of Justice and Peace and member of Vox Clara. Ladies and gentlemen, the most distinguished, most Reverend Dr. Peter Kwesi Sapong will respond, and then he will have the opportunity to deliver his own remarks later on. Thank you.
Your Majesty, Otumfuo, Asante, Nananom, brothers and sisters in Christ, I thank Professor Kofi Agyekung for the beautiful expose on leadership and courtesies of subjects in the Asante culture. I wrote this response to it before hearing it. I am therefore bound to be like this man who met a visitor from Europe at Accra. The visitor asked him, which is bigger, Accra or Kumasi? He replied, Cape Coast is the smallest. It is just impossible for me to do justice to this wonderful presentation. I can only appeal to my audience to accept my remarks as a courtesy to my old age. Asante culture is so organized that leadership is supported by functionaries to deal with every aspect of governance as if in a military situation. In a war situation, the king is at the center, surrounded by Otumfuo, the bodyguards. Behind the Otumfuo are the Chidom, and Kobia stays home to protect the women, the children, and old people in case the enemy circumvent the main army and raid them. Then come the vanguard, the Chancellor, the scouts, behind whom are the Trafuo, who clear the way for the main army to advance effortlessly. Behind the Trafuo are the country, Akwemu, and the Adontin, who form the main advance guard of the whole army. The left and right wings of the army would face the enemy if they attack from their sides. But in case the vanguard meets difficulty, they would call the right or left wing to come to their aid or to circumvent the enemy so that they are caught as in a net. Now, this structure demands some sterling qualities. Each side must be strong in itself to be able to encounter the enemy successfully. Each side must be fearless and faithful enough to perform its duty of guarding the golden stool. Never should it happen that a side, through weakness or imprudence or fear or sabotage or whatever, gives in. This military structure is reflected in the socio-political administration of the Asante, in which there are 15 Feku whose leaders should assist the king to rule by their counseling, support, and strength. The king, on accession to the golden stool, swears an oath of dependability to his subjects that they can depend on him to deliver the goods, whether in defending them fearlessly against all manner and kinds of aggression, military, political, social, economic, or being their father and their provider of their needs. Never will he allow them to be disgraced for the subjects too swear to him the oath of fealty, to be at his beck and call, night and day, as the speaker who has just spoken said, rain or shine. They will never let him down. They will never speak to him with water in their mouths. Only physical weakness, as the speaker has just said, Yadia, will make them falter in this. The king can trust them. In adjudication, he knows that each subject will tell him what he thinks is the case. When the king entrusts property, especially landed property, to them to look after, they will not, in the name of the king, take wrongful advantage to use their privilege in their own, to their own favor or in the favor of their friends and relatives. They assure the king that when they are appointed to arbitrate on his behalf, they will go about their work with expedition, transparency, sagacity, and the veracity expected of them. When the king has decided a case himself and leaves the implementation of the decision to them, the implementation of the decision he has arrived at to them, they will act with the honor, the dignity, and the authority of the king. The king relies on them to defend him and not to defame him. In chieftaincy matters, there are regulations. When an Ohima chooses a candidate to succeed a deceased chief, her advisors have no right to refuse the person, as is being done these days with unsavory frequency and glee. Unless, of course, there is an overriding reason for the refusal, such as the candidate not being a member of the ruling clan. The subjects must love and protect the king. Luckily, we have a king who brews no injustice, who adapts himself to the times, a king who is Otumfuo, one who sews pieces of broken rocks together. The antagonism between Asanteman and some other Akan chiefdoms or chiefdoms outside the Akan area is not his doing, nor indeed is it the doing of the incumbent rulers of those areas. He has sought to fraternize with these, or sometimes his own subjects, instead of encouraging him in his divinely appointed role of peacemaker, unfortunately oppose him, even if clandestinely. The title Otumfuo indicates the king's power. But Otumfuo said Tutu realizes that this power is shown especially by his spirit of forgiveness. His subjects should understand this. How is Otumfuo powerful if he has not got the power to forgive a certain wrong done to him because it is too big to be forgiven? If something is bigger than him, then how is he Otumfuo? At the end of the day, it is my view that the subjects of Otumfuo should act like the men of the Asante army who will fight to remove the intolerable evil in the name of the golden stool, even when they know they cannot win. That is what fidelity of subjects to the Asante is all about. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The Archbishop will proceed to give his main remarks on servant Asante as a servant king in the modern times.
Otumfuo, there are 4 operative words in the title of my presentation. Servant is one who is at the disposal of a master. Leader is one who helps to achieve an aim. King is one chosen to lead. Modern times connotes the idea that the king in the past was supposed to do or refrain from doing things which, in our day and age, need to be looked at carefully. Times have changed. What was expedient in the past is not necessarily so now. Although the abiding principles of our culture, like any other culture, remain forever, the symbols informing those indestructible elements often do change. Otumfuo realized The porcupine is a rodent, not a predator. It eats grass, not flesh. It does not attack any animal. It is often harmlessly hiding under a rotten dead wood. But it should not be taken for granted. The symbolism, therefore, stands for peace, tranquility. The distinctive habitual character of the Asante is justice. The Asante is a very faithful friend whom you can enslave if you want to. But when he realizes that then you will see the worst of him. Like the porcupine, it will defend itself by shooting its quills at you. The Asante ethos, therefore, is an ethos of peace, supported by insuperability, invincibility, courage, and total abhorrence for injustice. This is the ethos that our servant king, Otumfuo Osei Tutu II, in defense of all of us, has taken upon himself. The central government has been taking over the triple role of legislature, judiciary, and executive that was played in the past by the chief. The Asante has adapted himself perfectly well to this situation. In his own way, he has devised ways and means of ruling his people with regulations and laws on the land, chieftaincy affairs, traditional marriage, and other non-criminal contentious issues that touch the very essence of social life in Asante. He rules his people by pointing out their mistakes to them, warning them, encouraging them, helping them, as the case may be. He plays his judicial role through a flawless traditional adjudication system. A serious case before him, if a serious case comes before him, and he patiently consults his faculty lead heads and listens to them, but does not slavishly take advice if he knows it is wrong. The Asante performs the fifth function of a traditional leader impeccably. Everybody is a son or daughter. In fact, Nana. He does not discriminate, nor is he tribalistic. He married from an ethnic group which, at that time, did not have any law lost between it and Asante. Some of his most trusted employees, his legal advisor, his speechwriter, his pre-enstallment friends, his chief steward, his chief cook, etc., have all been non-Asante. He treats and is treated by the Dagomba as his sons and daughters. At home, what does he not do for his subjects? They pay him appropriate honor and express their love for him in many concrete ways in exchange, especially on festival days. He takes some of them on his trips abroad, including a visit even to the Pope. The main theme of the 20th anniversary celebration of His Majesty's installment begins with the words, Asante in the League of Nations. If I understand this well, it refers to the relationship between the Asante of Otumfuo, Tutu II, and other nations. In his case, this rapprochement has featured in the way he has been involved in funerals of other places. The Ashanti proverb says, "Owuo di emomuba." Let me give examples of just a few instances. During the 20 years of Otumfuo's reign, that he has honored this great saying. He himself attended the funeral of Nkuransahene. He has sent the Ofinsohene to 3 funerals, namely that of the chief of Techiman, the Gamanche, and the Anambra of Uga. He has sent the Achampimhene to attend the funeral of Abudu Yana. To the funeral of Andani Yana, he sent his Nsumankwahene. His representative was at the funeral of Mr. Kofi Annan. He sent Tepahene to Omabo's funeral. He himself magnanimously attended the 25th year celebration of Nana Oforiata I. There are many more instances of this kind. But the number of times he has sent emissaries to funerals of one personality or another in his own assentiment is simply uncountable. He attended in person the funeral mass of Archbishop Thomas Kweku Mensah. He gets people from all over the world, including heads of states, to attend the funerals that touch him, like that of his predecessor, Otumfuo Pokuwari II, and that of his mother, Nanefua Kobise Wampem, which saw enthusiastic attendance during the full 4 or 5 days it was celebrated. He is indeed a king, a father, a friend, and a benefactor to all and sundry who need his attention. He is a unifier. He accepts invitation to attend the celebration of the Kabaka of Uganda, and he accepts invitations to go to, by some Yoruba chief, to go to Nigeria, and many other places. The 7th function of a chief is one that the Asantehene performs with expected and uncharacteristically inimitable expertise. The custodian of culture. Who can fault the Asantehene in this? He gives an example of what culture is all about. Culture is what makes us what we are. Culture is what humanizes us. Culture is not just dancing and drumming and singing. All this is part of culture, yes. But culture, au fond, has much more than that. Culture gives us our values of humanity, of humility, of godliness, of hospitality, of greatness, of magnanimity, of respect for others, of respect for others, for elders, of respect for the aged, respect for the sacred, and respect for those in authority. Can you imagine, brothers and sisters, that the Asantehene has never referred to me in the 20 years he has succeeded to the golden stool in any other term than Papa. In a society, that is fast losing what it makes it what it is, the Asante stands out as a light to all of us. He has given a new meaning to chieftaincy, to leadership, to kinship, to nation building. Asante has shown the way to greatness as an Asante, as Ghanaians. To apply the words of St. Augustine, that great African theologian of North Africa in the 4th century, to Otumfuo, the Asante, I am terrified by what I am for you, but I am consoled about what I am with you. For you, I am a king, but with you, I am an Asante, a Ghanaian. All that we can say is that because Otumfuo, the servant of God, the just one, justifies the many and bears their iniquity, therefore the Lord says, I give him his portion among the many. He shall divide the spoils with the many. Otumfuo, I join those many thousands who have congratulated you and congratulating you on the 20th celebration of your ascension to the golden stool. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, the Most Reverend Dr. Peter Kwesi Sapong, for those remarks. We shall amend the program slightly on account of time and move to the last but not least speaker, Dr. Wilhelmina Donko, who should have been introduced the first time she spoke, but she will be our last speaker. She's a retired senior lecturer in history and founding head of Department of History and Political Science at the University of Science and Technology, where she taught for over 30 years. She's immediate past president of Garden City University College, trained at KNUST and University of Birmingham, UK. She's a social historian and the author of several peer-reviewed journal articles and book chapters. She initiated the PhD program in historical studies and trained the first cohort of 5 PhDs for the department at KNUST. Dr. Donko is an expert on Ashanti social history, memory of slavery, family histories, and public history. A PhD from the University of Birmingham, UK. She was a visiting scholar. She's been visiting scholar to many reputable institutions, including as a Fulbright scholar at the College of William and Mary in Williamsburg, United States. She's the co-author of The Just King, the story of Osei Tutu Kwame Esibe Bonsu. In addition, she has organized a number of international conferences on KNUST campus and has served as consultant for many projects, including traditional leadership and documentaries on slavery and its abolition. Dr. Wilhelmina Donko.
Otumfuo. Osei Tutu the second. Asante Hine. Nananom, members of the clergy, Vice Chancellor KNUST, colleagues, academics, and administrators, students, members of the press corps, ladies and gentlemen, once more, please hear me out. But please, it looked like I had a minute or two of my first 5 minutes, so I want to add 2 points. That the beauty of Asante is cultural borrowing. Asante is known to have fought many wars, but hardly was Asante ever the aggressor. Hardly was Asante ever the aggressor. But if you start, then Asante will follow and pursue it to the end. Secondly, when Asante conquers, they do not oppress the conquered people, but rather incorporate them. And then whatever the conquered people have is incorporated into the Asante system. Okay. Whatever the people have is incorporated into the Asante system. So we can add this to the first part that we made about the formation of the Asante state. Now I come to my own presentation for today. That is Women and Nation Building in Asante. And I'll start with a brief anecdote from my own life. As a little girl growing up, my big brother used to bully me, and whenever I wanted to retaliate, my mom would say, "Don't mind him. You are precious. You are a female. You have eggs inside you, but he doesn't." At the time, I didn't understand. So I was looking forward to the day when I'll begin to lay eggs and eat the eggs. But what my mom was telling me was that I was, as an Akan woman or female, I was valuable. I was precious. The continuity of the lineage depends on me. So I shouldn't take note of what the bullying men are doing. So I start by saying that the Asante woman has always known her own importance in society and politics. And it's true that most of the early writings on Asante tend to gloss over the role of the woman. And this is not unique to Asante, because women's studies is a recent development, and often they wrote about wars and so on. But now, looking at social history, and even looking very closely at Asante, we find that women have played a very important role in the political development of the state. Well, so much has been said about who are the Asante, where do they come from, or where can they be found. Briefly, I'll say that the Asante is complex. It's both a political, philosophical, linguistic, and cultural concept combined. Because if you are asked, we are there in mi Asante, we free him, mi free Asante, we ka kasabe, mi ka Asante, me buana. It's complex, but it means a lot. And anonymous Asante fu amoha. Mima mumoni yo. If we say Asante be Asante ne jinamoso. If Asante will be Asante, it's because of the people of Asante who are prepared to put themselves, their personal interest aside, to serve the greater interest of Asante Mai through the Asante Hine or through Otumfuo. So, memamu ayiko. Now, I'll say that a key feature of Asante sociocultural system is the attempt at achieving balance, and this translates onto the political arena. A typical example of this is the position of the female office holder, or Ohima, plural Ahima, who is a parallel to the male leaders or chiefs in the traditional political system. The Asante, for example, is the ruler of all Asante, and his position is paralleled by the Asante Hima. Now, within the Asante socio-political construct, just like other Akan-speaking people, is grounded in the matrilineal line, except in special cases where service tools or sumja are created for particular individuals for the service performed. The Asante acknowledge women as the founders of the various lineages and clans. Examples include Anchanyame, the matriarch of the Oyoko Koko lineage, who occupy the Sikeja of Asante. Ratri, for example, has remarked that women are more important in Asante than the men. And yet, we do not see the women conspicuously in the forefront. Now let's look quickly at the roles of the woman in politics in Asante. Asante acknowledge their matriarchs as founders and heads of their clans. These women organized the women in the polity and took care of their affairs. They also played important roles in central administration behind the scenes. They were acknowledged repositories of knowledge and wisdom. I'll share a brief experience I had at Apejafie with you. I went there several times while I was collecting data. At that time, the old woman, Nana Mapa, was still alive. She was Apejahima, and I thought she should be giving me the information, but she said, no, Cheng. She said, Mama Bansa. Mama is the current Apejahima Nana Druwa. I was surprised. Occasionally, Nanama will share a few snippets of valuable information with me. I thought she had everything, so why was she wasting time? Until eventually Nana Druwa came. And when she came, I realized eventually that it was worth the wait, and that Nana Mapa was right in asking me to hold on till Mama came. I learned that as a young girl, she was taken to live at the Ahimfie to prepare her for her special role as Ohineyere, a prospective mother of an Apejahene, and above all, to be groomed as the repository of historical information and customary practices. So she had been prepared to give information, and this tells you that the Asante woman in leadership is not just, when she talks, does not just talk what is of interest to her, but she is a repository of knowledge. Mama did not provide superficial information, but she delved deep into the nuances of Asantism to explain why things were done in particular ways. So we say female traditional leaders were endowed with historical information and traditional law, and therefore complicated issues were referred to them. I'm sure we have all heard the expression, Let us seek counsel from or consult the old woman. This principle has persisted up to the present. The word abrewa did not just mean an old woman, but it was used in this context in reference to her role as mother of the people and also as the repository of ancient knowledge and law that she had stored. It was also considered that by temperament, women were more patient, naturally more caring, observant, and considerate as mothers and better custodians. These qualities enabled them to give very wise advice behind the scenes that resulted in amicable settlement of issues, which male advisors alone could not resolve to avoid unrest and war. In Asante, one of the devices that was used to forge unity was dynastic marriages. Sometimes people refer to as stool wives. In the traditional system, it's called ayete. This system was used for political ends. This ensured that certain lineages provided wives for the Ohene. This system ensured harmony and loyalty in the society and state because children born from such unions owed allegiance to their father's lineage and looked up to them for favors. And then it also brings about a bond of allegiance between the lineage of the Ayete and the stool that they owe allegiance to, or the stool that they are married to. Since inheritance patterns for men in matrilineal societies like Asante often reflect the importance of the mother's brother, we see that rulers do not pass their titles on to their biological children, but to their maternal brothers or to their sisters' sons. A ruler's own biological son, the Ohineba, does not inherit the office because he is not a member of the ruling matrilineal family. However, the Ohineba may have an office bestowed on him by his father. However, women usually inherit status and property directly from their mothers in Asante. The woman in Asante politics also played a judicial role. As I've already referred to, Yenkobusa Abrewa, she was the repository of ancient knowledge and law, but she also, because of her qualities, provided very good arbitration for social cases. For example, in cases dealing with divorce, divorce, and rights to farmlands usually are referred to the Ohima for settlement. Besides, the woman plays a role in providing social control among females. She's informed about all females who reach the puberty stage. She inspects such girls to ensure that they have not committed the dreadful taboo of chiribra, that is, being sexually active before going through puberty rite ceremony. When approved, the Bragor rites would be performed for them to sanction their reproductive career and, of course, marriage. Now, I'll give a few examples of women who have distinguished themselves in Asante history. I'll start with my favorite, Asante Hima Nana Adoma Akosua. Nana Adoma Akosua deputized she reigned alongside Asantehene. She reigned alongside Asantehene Osei Tutu Bonsu. On two occasions, when he was away, she deputized for him, and she received emissaries from Europe and a trade delegation, and competently dealt with them as reported in the European records. The next I'll refer to is Echa Oyiakwan. She was the granddaughter of the Sikedwa. She was a diplomat of no mean caliber. She negotiated the release of Asante royals and personalities who were captured by the British during the 1826 Anglo-Asante War. Also, she played a key role in signing the Peace Treaty of 1831. Next, I refer to Nana Dwabin Sewa, who led the Dwabin in the reverse migration from the present Eastern region back to their ancestral home. When her sons died in succession, one would have expected her to crumble, but she didn't. She shepherded her people back home to Old Dwabin, and upon return, she led the reconstruction and also nurtured her daughter and granddaughter, who ruled after her in succession when there were no male heirs. Next, I refer to Nana Efuakobi. She ensured that her two sons, Nana Kwekudua Kuma, known in private life as Oberma Ajimai Kofi, and Nana Kwekudua III, who later became Nana Ajimai Prempeh I, ascended the Sikedwa, even when Asanteman had to fight a civil war. She was proven right when Nana Prempeh succeeded in regenerating Asante and setting the state on a development path until the British interruption in 1896. She further had to painfully leave most of her children and grandchildren behind to go into enforced exile and die there on account of Asanteman. Next is Ejusohima Nana Yasantua, who first ensured that only a rightful member of the lineage succeeded to the Ejusu stool. So when her only brother, Oguekro Afrani Okese, joined the ancestors, she nominated her grandson, Kofitini, to succeed him with a stool named Nana Afrani Kuma. When he was exiled along with the Asantehene, Nana Ajimai Prempeh, and other very prominent Asante by the British in 1896, his grandmother, Nana Yasantua, became like a wounded lion. This harm to her lineage gave her the insight into the British enterprise as an exercise to undermine lineages and ultimately Asanteman. This position led her to inspire the Asanteman to rise up against British colonial imposition. Eventually, she surrendered. She was exiled by the British and had to leave behind her beloved daughter, grandchildren, Ejusuman, and her beloved Asanteman. She died in the Seychelles and was buried there. Lastly, I talk about Nana Efua Kobise Wampem. Nana Efua, having served as the personal companion to her older sister, Nana Masewa Nyakum, for a long period, had the occasion to understudy her. This role was one of service, even though the Asantehima had her personal attendants. Not surprisingly, when Nana Efua Kobi was selected to succeed her sister in office. One of her greatest achievements was that apart from being the biological mother of Otumfuo Osei Tutu Abebio and Asantehima Nana Kunedu Yadom, Nana Efua Kobi allowed her youngest son to get the best training in preparation for his future role as Asantehene. Today, we are here to celebrate the achievements of Otumfuo over a 20-year period. The truth is, we cannot have this celebration without acknowledging the role of Nana Akufo in selecting her illustrious son. Nor can we also overlook her wise counsel that, until her demise, guided her son. On this note, I will humbly appeal to our audience today to join me in celebrating Nana Akufo Wampim and the heroic women of Asante who have worked Thank you. Who have worked so tirelessly, often behind the scenes, to make Asante the great Asante that we know today. Thank you.
Let's give another round of applause to all of our 4 speakers. In the interest of time, I will not do what chairpersons are usually supposed to do, which is walk through and try to summarize what each of the speakers had to say. What I'll do instead is just highlight generally some of the learning that we have learned or gotten from the various lectures and discussants this evening. So I think I have learned a lot about Asante's founding, about the central role of and the primacy of constitutions and institutions in the formation of Asante. That Asante was formed and has remained a nation of laws, a nation governed by laws and institutions, backstopped by important symbolism, such as the Golden Stool. We have also learned that, contrary to some received wisdom, that the Asante as symbolized in the Kotoko or porcupine is peaceable, courageous, but yet fearless in his and her defense of justice. That it is only when stirred up by injustice that the Asante comes across as aggressive. That it is not in the tradition of Asante for Asante to be the aggressors. Historically, that Asantes have not aggressed, but that they have often risen to repel aggression and other forms of injustice launched against them. I've also learned about the mutuality of dependence between leader and subject. That it is important that subjects be deeply knowledgeable about their language, about indigenous knowledge, cultural knowledge, if they actually hope and expect to be good subjects in the fashion that a good king or a good leader would require. We've also learned about in the matter of the servant king. We have learned about Otumfuo, Osei Tutu's role in his capacity, in the words of the Archbishop, as a light to his nation, as bringing light to his nation in the commitment that he has shown to fighting various forms of dehumanizing poverty, disease, ignorance, and hunger, such as in his commitment to education of all youth in Asante and beyond. And I think we've also learned that again, contrary to some of the received wisdom, even some of the received history, that archaeology, modern archaeology teaches us that this land has always been inhabited, that there is prehistoric evidence from archaeology to refute the earlier teachings about Asantes and other Akans having probably migrated from the Sahelian region and beyond. And that very close to this location are sites, important archaeological sites that are worth exploring to gain deeper knowledge of Asante history. And of course, last but not least, we've learned about the central role, the foundational role of women, including as the founders of the primary lineages and clans of Asante, as the repositories of knowledge and the transmission belts for carrying on this knowledge from generation to generation. We've learned that beyond the celebration of Nana Yasantua, there are many, many other Asante women of prominence, of distinction, and that these have made illustrious contributions to the growth and development of Asante, including in nurturing and grooming our future and, of course, our current leader, Otumfuo Osei Tutu II. On this note, I will hand the mic back to the moderators to bring the rest of the proceedings to a close. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are so privileged to celebrate our most illustrious king, Otumfuo Osei Tutu II, who has been named King Solomon, and his witness led to an unprecedented World Bank grant to support the PP-TAP program in Asanteman. And those of us who are a little conversant with Asante history are not surprised at all. Asante, since its formative stages, have always devised dynamic tactics to succeed at every point in time. In the formative stages of the Asante state, when it was imperative for unification of the various Asante city-states, the first king, Otumfuo Osei Tutu I, ensured that there was unification. His immediate successor, Otumfuo Opoku-Ware, the first, whose task was to consolidate the gains of his predecessor and expand the kingdom, devised means to do so. The very first of the Asante kings who encountered the British directly, Nana Osei Bonsu Asibe, between 1877 and 1824, through war and diplomacy, managed to keep Asante strong. After a period of civil wars and Asante defeat by the British in the early 1900s, there was the need to restore the Asante kingdom in the 1930s. And here again, Nana Osei Agyemang-Prempeh II took up that mantle rather excellently. Otumfuo Osei Tutu II, his immediate predecessor, Otumfuo Opoku-Ware II, in 1970, tried to expand Asante again by devising several other means of inculcating other regions who had previously or under various civilian and military government manipulations have been left out of the Asante Kingdom, brought them back to the Asante Kingdom. And our own illustrious and dynamic Otumfuo Osei Tutu II, when he ascended the throne, identified the modern trends as not physical battles, but a battle to fight poverty, a battle to fight diseases in Asante, and a battle to put Asante on the pedestal that is to remain relevant in these modern democratic dispensations. We congratulate you, Nana. We are so proud of you, and we are not surprised that that divinity in terms of leadership have been handed on to you. Congratulations. And we are so happy to have you here. We are also very, very grateful to the University Council and management who have helped put together this and have supported Otumfuo today and will subsequently do so for joining us today. We are happy to have our discussants, our very knowledgeable discussants and our chairman to share with us handy history of Asante that has enriched our knowledge this evening. Members of faculty of the university, Nananom, students, our second cycle institutions who have joined us, we are so happy and we are grateful to have you here to learn from every discussant here. Thank you very, very much. We now invite I've just been reminded that this program was put together by the Department of History and Political Studies in conjunction with the Royal Society for Culture and Asante History. I want to take this opportunity to also add that the Department of History and Political Studies have called for abstracts to put together a book publication in honor of this 20th anniversary. We have already published that on the 8th of April, and the deadline for the submission of abstracts is up to the end of May, and we encourage everybody to check the department website. We will put it there, and then submit your papers so that we can publish a very, very memorable book in honor of our great king. Thank you. On this note, I hand it over to our MC.
Thank you very much, moderator. Our colloquium under the theme Asante in the League of Nations, Otumfuo Osei Tutu II, the seventh king, has come to an end, and I believe the discussants, our moderators, yourselves deserve a loud round of applause. And to the thousands who listened on Love FM, we are very grateful. Just reminding you that tomorrow in the morning, the Chancellor's Cup match is between the staff team and the university team. You will write off the staff team at your own peril. So let's all meet tomorrow at Pajo to play this in honor of Otumfuo. And then later in the evening at 6 p.m., the Abakosem will be held right here in the Great Hall. It will be a night of poetry, recitals, music, dance, and everything culture you can think of. Shall we please rise for the closing prayer to be said by Reverend Father Dr. Peter Ademensa, the Catholic chaplain.
Shall we pray? Almighty God, in whom we live, move, and have our being, We continue to offer you thanks and praise for all that you've done for us, especially helping us to bring this session to an end. We continue to thank you for the life of Otumfuo Osei Tutu II and all that you have enabled him to accomplish through these 20 years in his reign. Continue to pray for him, that you continue to give him sense of direction so as to govern his people. We thank you for the lives of our discussants, the knowledge, the expertise that you have shared with us. Be with them and continue to bless them. We pray that replenish the energies that we have lost. And as we live here, we commend ourselves into your hands. Be with us, Lord. Guide us. Grant all of us safe, sound, return journeys. And may your face go before us and grant us your peace. These and many more we ask through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Please remain standing for the reception of the Chancellor.